All right, so today we're going to start practicing for reference modeling. So we're going to go through the basic steps of creating a reference sheet, doing the 3D model, and then there'll be a couple other parts where we'll do the unwrapping, creating the texture, and then applying it to the object. So let's go ahead and start with our practice object. We have here a camera. We got the reference pictures here. We may not have the best reference, but let's just pretend that your employer has given you this reference pack and said, model this camera for a game. So we need to get that taken care of. So let's go through the process. So the first thing that we need to do is we're going to need to create a reference sheet that will help us model it fairly accurately, and we can use those photos as a texture. So in Photoshop, you're going to go File, New, and just go ahead and name it right now. We're going to call it Camera Ref, short for reference, so REF, sheet, underscore, and just because this is a workshop, I'm going to go put my last name so I can keep track of it. Now, the width and height, you're going to do 1024 by 1024, standard game resolution. I put 54, whoops. And you're going to do 300 resolution, so we have high quality images. We could always reduce this or change the sizes later on. So if we were going to use this for a mobile game, we could just compress the texture to, 256 or 128, something like that. All right, so then you can go ahead and hit OK. Now, this is going to be our reference sheet. So we could start copying pictures in there, but before we do that, I'm going to show you how you can edit these pictures to actually make them fit properly. So let's go ahead and take our first picture here. Let's go with, it ends in 66. It's the best front view. You're going to drag that over into a new tab. So it's going to bring that into Photoshop, new tab. So this is separate from the reference sheet, right? Because we're going to edit this first and then put it in the reference sheet. So we're going to learn a new tool. Behind the crop tool is perspective crop. Perspective crop. Now this is pretty cool because we're going to actually tell the computer what the perspective is on this camera, and it's going to flatten it out. So we're only concerned about the front. The top doesn't matter. So if you click and drag out, you're going to get your grid, and you can move the corners around to get a nice perspective edge. You want to line it up with your bottom. Right, and the one thing that you can check is look at the grid lines going across here. Right, you can see if it needs to be raised up a little bit. So you can see the line here going across the camera. It's a little bit low on this extrusion here compared to over here. So I'm just going to raise this up a bit to kind of match that up. And I would say that looks pretty good. I can go ahead and hit enter and flatten that out. All right, so go ahead and unlock this layer. Now to get this moved over to our reference sheet, I'm going to control click the thumbnail. You get the dotted ants, right? The dotted ants tells you that you have it selected. Then I can do copy, control C, go over to camera reference and paste it in. And it will be massive. You can go ahead and scale it down, hold shift and scale it down. And you'll scale it down until we get it to fit. Now, don't scale it really small, right? Leave it big for now because we don't know how we're going to fit all of these in exactly yet, right? And every object will be different. You don't want to scale it down really small because then if you go to scale it back up later on, you could lose resolution. So we want to keep it fairly big for now. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this layer front because it's the front of the camera. Now you're going to repeat the perspective crop tool for all the other pieces. So I'll go ahead and cover the bottom here. Now for the bottom, we've got two pictures, right? The best picture is going to be this one here, number 72, because it's the closest to being flat. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that into my new canvas. Grab the perspective crop. And start to get those angles. Checking for the grid lines again, right? So the more accurate our lines are going across, the better our texture is going to be. So we look at this flat piece here, right? It's not, the spacing right here and right here are not quite the same. So I kind of pull this up so I get better perspective. And that looks pretty good. So I'll go ahead, that's close enough, and check that down. And this will be something that we can use for our texturing. So I'm going to go ahead and control click the thumbnail, copy, and paste this over. Now the one thing that you're going to want to do that's really important, right, we're going to go off our front, is this is the bottom, and it actually needs to be rotated. Well, actually, I guess it would be this direction. There we go. So I'm going to line these up to where they're the same size, right? If you want to do Control R and bring out your rulers, we could say, right, the camera is these dimensions, right? Then I can line up my picture, scale it down. So I want to try to line up my pictures as accurately as possible to the actual size. And I'm going to call this one bottom. Right, and so as I'm going, I can kind of start to scale these down a little bit and start figuring out where I want to place each one of these pictures. And when you're done editing your edits, you can close those out. You don't need to save those, but you do need to save your camera reference sheet. So we want to get it as close to being accurate as possible. So we're going to want the sides to be realistically how they would fit. So we might need a little bit more space for the sides on each side, and then the top, we'll put top above that, and then we could also fit the back in here, right? So I will show you the final product. So this is the end result of what we want to get. So when you copy them all in, I've got each side of the camera as well as the bottom, which looks like this one. I need to flip around. There we go. Because the black would indicate the back. So this is the front going around. And then I threw in the best 3/4 picture that I had of this camera so that it kind of helped me a little bit with depth and to see things, right, just for reference. But if we just look at the back, it's still the same accurate size approximately. Scale that up a little bit. So everything is kind of lined up fairly accurate. So we can leave this 3/4 in there just to help us out with the modeling. So once you're done with that, you're going to save that as your reference sheet. Take a few minutes to go ahead and crop, a perspective crop the top as well, so you can get all of those as best you can lined up.